The emergency beacon pierced through the cosmic void with desperate urgency.
Captain ZYXTH of the Kalari Republic pressed her six-fingered hands against the communication console, her crystalline skin flickering with stress patterns that would have been invisible to most species. The holographic display showed their current predicament in stark, terrifying detail. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded starships for over 2 centuries.
"Hull breach in sectors 7 through 12. Life support failing in the lower decks. Enemy forces maintaining pursuit vector," reported her tactical officer, a young Kalari whose stress patterns were so bright they practically illuminated the bridge.
The enemy ships appeared on their sensors like harbingers of doom. The Vortak Empire had been hunting their small diplomatic vessel for 3 standard days now, ever since they had witnessed something they were never meant to see. The Vortak were planning an invasion of the neutral zones, and the Kalari delegation had accidentally stumbled upon their secret military buildup. ZYXTH knew they would never make it to friendly space. Their ship was damaged, outgunned, and running on emergency power.
The Vortak vessels were closing in, their weapons charging for what would certainly be the final strike. "Captain," called out the communications officer, his voice trembling. "We're receiving multiple hails from the pursuing vessels.
They're demanding our surrender."
"Ignore them," ZYXTH replied curtly. She had no intention of surrendering the intelligence they carried. Too many lives depended on warning the galaxy about Vortak intentions.
The ship shuddered under another weapon's impact.
Emergency lights flickered, and the artificial gravity fluctuated momentarily.
ZYXTH gripped her command chair as debris rained from the ceiling.
"Captain, we have one option," the tactical officer said hesitantly.
"There's a star system nearby. It's listed in our databases as inhabited."
ZYXTH's mandibles clicked in confusion. "By whom? This sector is supposed to be unexplored space."
"According to our records, the species calls themselves humans.
They're listed as a newly spacefaring civilization.
Primitive technology, barely capable of interplanetary travel within their own system." The captain's stress patterns dimmed slightly as she considered this. A primitive species would be of little help against the Vortak, but perhaps they could find somewhere to hide, or at least send a final message to warn the Republic.
"Set course for the human system," she ordered.
"And prepare a general distress beacon.
Standard galactic emergency protocols." "Captain, with respect, a primitive species won't understand our technology or our language.
They won't even be able to detect our presence, let alone help us."
ZYXTH's skin flashed with grim determination.
"Then, we'll broadcast in their primitive languages.
Our cultural database should have enough information to construct a basic plea for assistance." The ship lurched again as another Vortak plasma blast struck their rear shields. The shield generators whined in protest, their energy reserves dropping to critical levels. "Hull breach in engineering."
"We're venting atmosphere," shouted a voice over the intercom. "Emergency bulkheads sealed, but we've lost another 3% of our air supply," reported the environmental systems officer. The human star system grew larger on their view screen as they limped toward it at maximum available speed. The Vortak ships were gaining ground steadily, their superior technology and undamaged hulls giving them every advantage.
"Captain, I'm detecting multiple planets in this system.
The third planet from the star appears to be the inhabited one.
It's surprisingly active for a primitive world."
ZYXTH moved to the science station to examine the sensor readings herself. What she saw confused her. The planet showed signs of massive industrial activity, electromagnetic emissions that suggested advanced communications networks, and energy signatures that seemed far more sophisticated than their database indicated. "When was our last intelligence update on this species?" she asked. "Approximately 50 of their years ago, Captain. The Galactic Survey marked them as pre-warp, non-threatening, technological development rate, extremely slow."
"These readings suggest otherwise," ZYXTH muttered. "Prepare the distress message anyway.
Include our coordinates, our situation, and a warning about the Vortak invasion plans. If they can't help us, perhaps they can at least preserve the information." The communications officer worked frantically at his station, accessing the cultural database and constructing a message in what their computers indicated was the dominant human language group.
"Captain, the Vortak ships are within weapons range.
They're charging their main guns."
ZYXTH watched the tactical display with growing dread. 3 heavy Vortak cruisers had surrounded them in a perfect attack formation.
Each ship was twice the size of their diplomatic vessel and armed with enough firepower to reduce a small moon to cosmic dust.
Broadcast the message. All frequencies, maximum power, she commanded. The transmission burst forth from their damaged ship, carrying their plea for help across the electromagnetic spectrum.
The message was simple but desperate. They were peaceful diplomats under attack by an aggressive empire, carrying vital intelligence that could save millions of lives. They requested any assistance the humans could provide, no matter how small.
Message sent, Captain. But I'm not detecting any response from the planet.
It may take time for them to. The tactical officer's warning came too late.
The first Vortak volley struck their ship with devastating force. The main power grid failed, plunging the bridge into emergency lighting.
Gravity generators sparked and died, leaving the crew floating in zero gravity.
Return fire. ZYXTH commanded, though she knew it was futile.
Their remaining weapons managed only a token response.
The small plasma charges barely scratched the Vortak shields.
The enemy ships moved in for the kill, their massive hulls blocking out the stars. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the third planet, the science officer reported, his voice filled with confusion.
These readings are impossible. The energy output is increasing exponentially.
On the viewscreen, the blue and green world that had seemed so peaceful moments before now pulsed with activity. Bright flashes of light appeared in orbit around the planet, growing larger and more numerous by the second.
What are those energy signatures? ZYXTH demanded. I don't know, Captain. The technology is completely unknown.
The power levels are reading as equivalent to our largest battlecruisers, but the designs are unlike anything in our databases.
The Vortak ships had noticed the activity as well.
Their formation wavered as their commanders tried to understand what they were seeing.
The attacking vessels held their fire, suddenly, uncertain about what they had stumbled into. Captain, I'm detecting movement from those energy signatures. They're spacecraft. Hundreds of them. And they're heading directly toward us.
The first human ships became visible on their screens as tiny points of light that grew rapidly larger. But, as the vessels approached, it became clear that tiny was a relative term. These ships were massive, bristling with weapons systems that made even Vortak technology look primitive.
Captain, the lead human vessel is hailing us.
They're using our own communication protocols.
ZYXTH's stress patterns flickered in amazement. Put them through.
The viewscreen filled with the image of a human face. The creature looked remarkably similar to their own species, despite the obvious evolutionary differences. 2 eyes instead of 4, rigid bone structure instead of flexible cartilage, but the intelligence behind those eyes was unmistakable.
This is Admiral Saracen of the Human Defense Fleet, the being said in perfect Kalari. We received your distress call. Are you the vessel requesting assistance? Yes, ZYXTH managed to say. I am Captain ZYXTH of the Kalari Republic. But, how do you know our language?
How did you? We'll have time for explanations later, Captain.
Right now, you have 3 hostile vessels preparing to attack. We're going to need you to move away from the combat zone. ZYXTH looked at her tactical display. The 3 Vortak ships were now surrounded by what appeared to be an entire human fleet. Dozens of massive warships had appeared as if from nowhere, their weapons trained on the alien aggressors. Human vessels, this is War Commander Thekmal of the Vortak Empire, came a new transmission. You are interfering in an internal matter. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Chan's expression didn't change. War Commander, you are in human space, attacking a vessel that requested our protection. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw. The Vortak commander's response was predictable. You primitive mammals dare to threaten the might of the Empire? We shall reduce your pathetic fleet to atoms. 29 seconds, Chen replied calmly.
The Vortak ships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to cripple a space station. But, the human ships simply absorbed the attack as if it were nothing more than a gentle rain. Their shields flared briefly and, then, stabilized, completely unaffected.
Time's up, Admiral Chen said simply. What happened next defied everything ZYXTH thought she knew about space warfare.
The human ships didn't fire massive energy beams or launch swarms of missiles.
Instead, they deployed what could only be described as controlled singularities. Tiny black holes appeared near each Vorthack vessel, their gravitational fields tearing the enemy ships apart at the molecular level. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 seconds. 3 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across space by forces that should have been impossible to control. Captain ZYXTH, Admiral Chen's voice brought her back to reality. We're sending medical teams and engineers to assist with your repairs. Our scientists would like to debrief you about these Vorthack invasion plans you mentioned. Yes, of course, ZYXTH stammered. But, Admiral, your technology, your fleet, our records indicated that humans were barely capable of spaceflight. Chen smiled, and there was something both reassuring and terrifying about the expression. Captain, your records are about 50 years out of date. We've made some improvements since then. As human ships moved in to assist their damaged vessel, ZYXTH realized that the galaxy had just become a very different place. Whatever humans had become during their isolation, they were far from the primitive species everyone believed them to be. The rescue ships that docked with their vessel were marvels of engineering. Human crew members floated through the damaged sections with equipment that seemed to repair molecular-level damage in seconds. Their medical teams worked with an efficiency that suggested they had encountered many different alien physiologies before. Admiral, ZYXTH said during a private communication, may I ask how many ships responded to our distress call? This was just the local patrol, Captain. About 200 vessels from the Sol System defense grid. Just a patrol? ZYXTH's voice rose an octave. How many ships does humanity possess? That's classified information, Captain. But, let's just say that when humans decide to help someone, we don't do anything halfway. As their ship was rapidly restored to full functionality by human technology, ZYXTH began to understand the magnitude of what had just occurred. They had called for help from what they thought was a primitive species, and an entire armada had responded within minutes. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. And, for those who threatened the innocent, that discovery would be their last. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the main briefing room of the flagship UES Determination, studying the holographic star charts with practiced eyes. The Kalari captain sat across from her, still processing everything that had happened in the past 6 hours. The aliens' crystalline skin had shifted from stress patterns to what their translation software indicated was amazement mixed with fear. Captain ZYXTH, Chen began, let's start with what you observed about the Vorthack military buildup. The Kalari officer straightened in her specially adapted chair. Admiral, our diplomatic mission was returning from peace talks with the hegemony worlds when our navigation system malfunctioned. We dropped out of hyperspace in what should have been empty space, but, instead found ourselves in the middle of a massive Vorthack staging area. Chen leaned forward. How massive? Over 3,000 ships, Admiral. Battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, troop carriers, supply vessels. The largest military fleet I've seen in my 2 centuries of service. ZYXTH paused, her skin flickering with remembered terror. They were conducting war games against targets that looked exactly like Kalari, Federation, and Alliance colonies. The human admiral's expression remained neutral, but her aide noticed her hands tighten slightly. Did you identify their intended targets? Yes. We recorded everything before they detected our presence. 17 systems across the neutral zone, including several major population centers. Billions of lives, Admiral. Chen stood and walked to the large viewport that dominated one wall of the briefing room. Outside, the human fleet continued its patrol patterns around the now-safe Kalari vessel. Each ship moved with mechanical precision, their crews already preparing for what they all knew was coming. Captain, I need to ask you about galactic politics. Our information about the current state of interstellar relations is somewhat limited. ZYXTH's confusion was evident. Limited? But surely humanity participates in the Galactic Council sessions? No, Captain. Humanity has never been invited to join the Galactic Council. According to our records, we were classified as a pre-warp civilization and deemed too primitive for contact. The Kalari officer's skin pattern shifted to what their computers translated as shock. But, that's impossible. Your technology, your fleet, this level of advancement would require centuries of galactic interaction and technology sharing. Chen turned back to face her guest. Captain, humanity developed everything you see here entirely on our own.
We've been aware of galactic civilization for over 60 years, but we've been waiting for official contact.
60 years? ZYXTH's voice rose to a higher pitch. You've known about us for 60 years and said nothing? We intercepted our first alien communications in the late 20th century. Since then, we've been listening, learning, and preparing. Chen activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. What you see here is the result of human isolation driving innovation. The display showed a solar system that bore little resemblance to what galactic databases indicated. Every planet and major asteroid had been extensively modified. Mars showed vast cities under protective domes. The asteroid belt had been converted into a massive industrial complex. Even the outer planets had orbital facilities that dwarfed most space stations. This is incredible, ZYXTH whispered. The industrial capacity alone, how many humans are there?
Approximately 42 billion across the solar system, Captain. We've learned to make efficient use of available space.
Before ZYXTH could respond, the ship's communication system activated. Admiral Chen to the bridge.
Priority 1 communication from Fleet Command. Chen moved to a secure terminal and activated it with biometric scanners that seemed far too advanced for a species that should have been using chemical rockets. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to an older human with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much.
Admiral Chen, this is Fleet Admiral Martinez. What's the situation with our alien guests?
Sir, we have confirmation of a massive Vortak military buildup. They're planning coordinated strikes against neutral zone populations.
Estimated casualties in the billions. Martinez nodded grimly.
The President has authorized Operation Helping Hand. You are to escort Captain ZYXTH to the nearest Galactic Council facility and provide whatever assistance is necessary to prevent this invasion. Sir, that would mean revealing our capabilities to the entire galactic community.
Admiral, humanity has been preparing for first contact for decades.
This situation presents an opportunity to introduce ourselves on our own terms while preventing a massive atrocity.
Martinez paused. Besides, after today's engagement, I suspect word is already spreading. Chen understood.
The Vortak ships they had destroyed would have been sending sensor data back to their fleet until the moment of their destruction.
Understood, sir. What level of force are we authorized to deploy? Whatever is necessary, Admiral. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity doesn't stand by while innocents are threatened.
The communication ended, leaving Chen alone with her thoughts for a moment. Then, she turned back to Captain ZYXTH, who had been listening with growing amazement.
Captain, we're going to escort you to the nearest council facility.
But, first, I think you should understand exactly what you've gotten yourself involved with. Chen activated another holographic display, this one showing ship specifications that made ZYXTH's stress patterns flare bright enough to illuminate the entire room. The human vessels weren't just advanced, they were revolutionary. Energy weapons based on controlled fusion reactions, defensive systems that could manipulate gravitational fields, faster-than-light drives that didn't require the exotic matter most species used.
Admiral, these specifications, some of this technology shouldn't be possible. Controlled gravity manipulation alone requires theoretical physics that most species abandon as impractical. Humans have a saying, Captain, impossible is just an opinion. When we learned about galactic civilization, we realized we were decades behind in development.
So we took a different approach. Chen highlighted several technical innovations on the display.
Instead of following established technological paths, we developed our own.
It turns out that isolation can be an advantage when it forces innovation.
The ship's intercom activated again. Admiral Chen, we're receiving multiple hyperspace signatures.
Large fleet incoming, bearing directly for the Sol system. Chen and ZYXTH hurried to the bridge, where the tactical displays showed a nightmare scenario. Over 200 Vortak ships were approaching at maximum speed, their intentions clearly hostile. It appears the Vortak have decided to investigate what happened to their ships, Chen observed calmly.
Admiral, ZYXTH said urgently, you need to evacuate your system immediately. That's a full Vortak battle fleet. They have enough firepower to crack planets. Thank you for the warning, Captain. But, I think they're about to discover something important about human nature.
The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements suggesting they had drilled for this exact scenario countless times.
Status reports flowed in from across the solar system as humanity's hidden defenses came online. Admiral, Jupiter Defense Grid reports ready. Mars Command confirms all batteries charged. Luna Base is standing by with full strike capability. Earth Orbital Defense Platform reports ready for engagement. ZYXTH listened in growing disbelief. You've militarized your entire star system?
Captain, humans learned long ago that peace requires strength. When we realized we lived in a galaxy filled with species that might not share our values, we decided to be prepared. The first Vorthack ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, immediately beginning aggressive sensor sweeps. Their formation was textbook perfect, designed to overwhelm any resistance through coordinated firepower. Unknown vessels, came a transmission in the Vorthack language: you have destroyed Imperial property and harbored enemies of the Empire.
Surrender immediately or face annihilation.
Chen activated the general communication system, broadcasting her response throughout the solar system and beyond.
Vorthack fleet, you have entered human space without permission and with hostile intent. You will reverse course immediately or face the consequences. The Vorthack commander's laughter was audible across the communication channel. Pathetic mammals, you face the might of 200 Imperial warships.
We shall enjoy reducing your primitive world to molten slag.
Admiral, the tactical officer reported, Vorthack ships are forming attack formations. They're targeting our population centers. Chen's expression hardened. All defense grids, you are cleared to engage. Show them what humanity is capable of.
What the Vorthack encountered next would become the subject of military analysis for centuries to come. The asteroid belt itself seemed to come alive, revealing hidden weapons platforms disguised as mining operations. The moons of Jupiter opened to reveal massive railgun installations capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of lightspeed. Mars launched swarms of autonomous defense drones, each one equipped with weapons that could cripple a cruiser. But the most shocking revelation came from Earth itself. The planet's surface opened in dozens of locations, revealing launch bays for ships that dwarfed anything in the attacking fleet. These weren't patrol vessels or local defense craft, they were full-sized dreadnoughts that had been hidden beneath the surface of humanity's homeworld.
Impossible, the Vorthack commander transmitted.
Our intelligence reports indicated primitive chemical propulsion and basic nuclear weapons. Your intelligence was 50 years out of date, Chen replied as the first human counterattack reached the invading fleet. The engagement that followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. Human weapons technology had evolved along completely different lines from galactic standard. Where most species focused on energy weapons and shield technology, humans had perfected kinetic systems and defensive measures based on dimensional manipulation. Vorthack plasma cannons, designed to overwhelm conventional shields, simply had nothing to target when human ships shifted slightly out of normal spacetime. Meanwhile, human kinetic weapons struck with the force of asteroid impacts, punching through even the heaviest armor as if it were made of paper. Admiral, ZYXTH said softly, they're not even fighting back effectively.
No, Captain.
They came here expecting to face a primitive species.
Instead, they found humanity.
The Vorthack fleet, which had seemed so intimidating moments before, began to break formation as ship after ship fell to human weapons.
Their formation dissolved into chaos as commanders realized they were fighting an enemy whose technology they couldn't understand or counter. Human fleet, came a desperate transmission from the Vorthack commander, we request immediate ceasefire. We surrender. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of what had once been a proud Imperial fleet. Less than 30 Vorthack ships remained intact, and those were heavily damaged. Vorthack commander, you came here to destroy our civilization and commit genocide against neutral populations. Why should we grant quarter? Because we were following orders. The Empire demands expansion. Then, the Empire is about to learn some new facts about this galaxy, Commander. Chen activated ship-wide communications. Vorthack vessels, you will return to your territory and deliver a message to your leadership. Humanity is now aware of your invasion plans, and we will not tolerate attacks against innocent populations. You cannot stop the entire Vorthack Empire, the commander protested. Chen smiled, the expression cold enough to freeze helium. Commander, what you encountered here was our local defense force. Our actual fleet is somewhat larger.
As the surviving Vorthack ships limped away at maximum speed, ZYXTH realized that everything she thought she knew about galactic politics had just changed forever. Humanity hadn't just announced their presence, they had declared themselves a major power with the capability to back up their words. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The Galactic Council chambers had never hosted an emergency session quite like this one. Representatives from over 40 species filled the massive amphitheater, their various forms of agitation clearly visible across a dozen different physiologies. At the center of the circular chamber, Captain ZYXTH stood before the assembly, her crystalline skin reflecting the chamber's lights as she prepared to deliver testimony that would change galactic civilization forever. High Counselor Veltar, a being whose species had helped establish the Council 3 millennia ago, activated the session's recording systems with a gesture of his primary manipulator arms. Captain ZYXTH of the Kalari Republic, you have requested this emergency session to present intelligence regarding an imminent threat to galactic security. The Council recognizes your testimony. ZYXTH's stress patterns had stabilized during the 2-day journey to the Council station, but she could feel them beginning to flicker again as hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. Honored Counselors, 3 days ago our diplomatic vessel witnessed a massive Vorthack military buildup in what we believe to be uninhabited space. We observed preparations for coordinated strikes against 17 neutral systems. A ripple of concern passed through the assembled representatives. The Vorthack Empire had been a minor concern for decades, but their territory was distant enough that most Council species considered them someone else's problem. Captain, interrupted Counselor Hexnai of the Trade Federation, while this intelligence is concerning, the Vorthack have made aggressive noises before. What makes this situation warrant an emergency session? Because, Counselor, when we attempted to flee with this intelligence, we were pursued into a system inhabited by a species not represented on this council. A species that our databases indicated was pre-spaceflight and primitive. The chamber buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. High Counselor Veltar raised his arms for silence. Captain, you're referring to the humans, correct? Our surveys classify them as technologically juvenile. They shouldn't have been capable of rendering assistance. That's what we thought, ZYXTH replied, her skin pattern shifting to display the Kalari equivalent of grim amusement. We were wrong. Dramatically, catastrophically wrong. She activated the holographic display system, filling the center of the chamber with sensor recordings from their encounter. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as massive human warships materialized seemingly from nowhere, their weapons systems reducing Vorthack cruisers to subatomic particles in seconds. This is impossible, declared Counselor Orthmak of the Military Alliance. Our last intelligence reports on humanity indicated they had barely achieved chemical propulsion. This technology is centuries beyond their supposed capabilities. Counselors, ZYXTH continued, what you've seen is only the beginning. The human response to our distress call included over 200 vessels, which their commander described as local patrol. When a Vorthack retribution fleet of 200 ships attacked their system, humanity's actual defenses came online. The next series of recordings caused an uproar that Veltar struggled to control. Representatives watched in amazement and growing fear as human defensive systems revealed themselves throughout their star system. Asteroid-mounted weapons platforms, planetary defense grids, and hidden fleet bases that shouldn't have been possible for a species supposedly limited to their home planet. Honored Counselors, ZYXTH raised her voice above the chaos. Humanity has been aware of galactic civilization for approximately 60 years. They've been listening to our communications, studying our technology, and developing countermeasures in complete isolation. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Counselor Ythera of the Science Collective was the first to voice what many were thinking. You're saying that while we classified them as primitive, they were conducting espionage against the entire galactic community? No, Counselor. I'm saying that while we ignored them as irrelevant, they were preparing to defend themselves against any threat we might pose. Admiral Fexowell of the Defense Corps stood from his position. Captain, these recordings could be fabricated. The technology you're describing violates several fundamental principles of physics as we understand them. Admiral, I have 3 surviving Vorthack vessels that can corroborate every detail of my testimony. More importantly, I have been invited to present a human representative to this council. The chamber erupted again. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no previously unknown species had ever been granted immediate audience with the full council.
The protocols alone should have required decades of preliminary contact and evaluation.
High Counselor Veltar's authority resonated through the chamber's acoustic system as he called for order.
Captain ZYXTH, the Council will hear this human representative. However, I must warn you that if this proves to be some elaborate deception, the consequences for your republic will be severe. I understand, High Counselor. Humanity is prepared to address the Council immediately.
The main entrance to the chamber opened, revealing a sight that caused several representatives to activate their personal defense systems. A human female entered, flanked by what appeared to be an honor guard of 4 additional humans. But it was their equipment that caused the immediate alarm. Each human wore what looked like simple clothing by their standards, but Council security sensors immediately detected energy signatures that matched those of personal defense systems used by the most advanced military species. The humans' casual confidence suggested they were either completely unaware of the effect they were having, or confident enough in their abilities to be unconcerned. Admiral Sarah Chen approached the center of the chamber with measured steps, her eyes taking in the assembled representatives with professional assessment.
When she spoke, her words were translated simultaneously into dozens of languages by the Council's systems. Honored Counselors, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. I come before you to address the Vortak threat and to formally introduce humanity to galactic civilization. Counselor Hexnai leaned forward in his seat. Admiral, our records indicate that your species achieved interplanetary flight only recently. How do you explain the technology witnessed by Captain ZYXTH? Chen smiled, the expression carrying warmth that somehow made several representatives nervous rather than reassured. Counselor, humanity has been aware of galactic civilization since our early 21st century. We intercepted communications from various species and realized we were not alone. We also realized that contact would eventually be inevitable. So you prepared for war? Admiral Fexowell's accusation carried an edge of threat. No, Admiral.
We prepared for survival. Chen activated a portable holographic projector, filling the chamber with images of human technological development. When we analyzed galactic communications, we discovered that space is not the peaceful frontier many species claim it to be. We found evidence of slavery, conquest, genocide, and empire building on a massive scale. The representatives shifted uncomfortably.
Chen's assessment was accurate, though most preferred not to discuss the darker aspects of galactic history.
Humanity made a decision, Chen continued. We would develop the capability to defend ourselves and others before we announced our presence.
We would not become victims or perpetrators of galactic violence. High Counselor Veltar studied the human admiral carefully.
Admiral, the technology described by Captain ZYXTH suggests capabilities that exceed our most advanced civilizations.
How did a single species develop such advances in isolation?
Counselor, necessity is humanity's greatest teacher.
When we learned about galactic civilization, we also learned about its failures. We saw species conquered, enslaved, or destroyed because they couldn't defend themselves. We decided that would never happen to humanity.
Chen gestured to the holographic display, showing human technological development in compressed time.
We took a different approach to advancement. Instead of following established galactic technological paths, we innovated. We developed solutions to problems other species considered impossible to solve.
Such as? Counselor Ythera of the Science Collective leaned forward with obvious interest. Gravitational manipulation, controlled singularity weapons, dimensional phase technology for defense, and faster-than-light communication systems that don't require subspace networks. The implications caused another uproar. Several of the technologies Chen mentioned casually were theoretical concepts that galactic science had abandoned as impractical millennia ago. Admiral, Counselor Orthmec said slowly, you're claiming that humanity has independently solved several fundamental challenges that have stumped galactic civilization for thousands of years.
Yes, Counselor. Isolation forced innovation.
We didn't know these problems were supposed to be unsolvable, so we solved them.
Admiral Fexowell stood again, his posture radiating suspicion. Admiral Chen, if humanity possesses such advanced capabilities, why reveal yourselves now? Why not remain hidden and continue your technological development? Chen's expression became serious.
Because, Admiral, the Vortak Empire is planning to commit genocide against billions of innocent beings.
Humanity will not stand by while atrocities are committed, regardless of the political convenience. You would risk exposing your civilization to protect species you've never met? High Counselor Veltar's question carried genuine confusion.
Counselor, humanity learned early in our development that evil succeeds when good people do nothing.
We've been monitoring galactic communications for decades.
We know about the hegemony wars, the spiral arm conquests, and the Outer Rim genocides.
We've watched civilizations fall while the Galaxy Council debated responses.
The chamber fell silent.
Chen had just referenced some of the most shameful episodes in galactic history, events where Council inaction had led to massive suffering.
Admiral, Veltar said carefully, are you suggesting that humanity intends to police galactic civilization?
No, Counselor.
We're suggesting that humanity intends to defend those who cannot defend themselves.
Whether that makes us police or protectors depends on your perspective. Chen activated another display, showing real-time intelligence about Vorthack fleet movements. The invasion force is currently mobilizing.
They have over 3,000 ships prepared for simultaneous strikes against 17 systems.
Estimated casualties exceed 4 billion sentient beings.
The numbers caused shocked silence throughout the chamber.
Several representatives began urgent communications with their home governments.
What do you propose?
High Counselor Veltar asked. Joint action, Counselor.
Humanity is prepared to take action with or without Council approval, but we prefer to work within galactic law when possible.
Admiral Thexoel's skepticism was evident.
Admiral, even if your claims about human capabilities are accurate, the Vorthack Empire controls over 50 systems. Their total military capacity exceeds 10,000 ships.
How could any single species, regardless of technological advancement, challenge such numbers?
Chen's smile returned, and, this time several representatives activated personal defense shields in response to what their instincts interpreted as a predator's expression.
Admiral Thexoel, you're thinking like most galactic civilizations.
You assume that conflict is about matching numbers with numbers, technology with technology.
Chen paused. Humanity learned to think differently.
We don't plan to fight 10,000 ships.
Then, what do you plan?
Veltar asked. We plan to make further aggression impossible without destroying a single Vorthack civilian.
Counselor, humanity doesn't make war on populations. We make war on the capacity to make war.
The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives tried to understand what the human admiral meant. But, before anyone could ask for clarification, Chen's communication device activated.
Admiral Chen, this is Fleet Command. Vorthack forces have begun their attack on the neutral systems. First strike has commenced against the Helix colonies. Chen's expression hardened. Understood. Execute Operation Protective Custody.
She looked up at the assembled representatives, her voice carrying absolute certainty.
Counselors, humanity just became an active participant in galactic politics.
You'll want to watch what happens next very carefully. The main tactical display in the Galactic Council's Crisis Center showed a real-time map of 17 star systems under simultaneous attack. Red indicators marked Vorthack assault fleets as they moved against defenseless colonies, their intent clear and brutal. High Counselor Veltar stared at the display with growing horror as casualty reports began streaming in.
Helix Colony 7 reports massive orbital bombardment.
Estimated casualties in the hundreds of thousands in climbing, reported the Council's intelligence coordinator, his voice tight with stress.
Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the display, her expression calm despite the unfolding catastrophe.
Behind her, the Galactic Council representatives watched in shocked silence as their worst fears materialized before their eyes. Admiral Chen, High Counselor Veltar said urgently, if humanity truly has the capabilities you claim, surely you must act immediately.
Millions will die while we debate protocols.
Counselor, humanity began acting the moment the first Vorthack shot was fired, Chen replied without taking her eyes off the tactical display. Before Veltar could ask what she meant, new indicators began appearing on the display. Blue markers materialized throughout the combat zones, moving with impossible speed toward Vorthack positions.
What are those signatures? Admiral Thexoel demanded. They're appearing faster than any known FTL technology allows. Those are human intervention forces, Chen explained calmly. We've been positioned and ready for this attack for the past 48 hours.
The first sign of human intervention came at the Helix colonies, where 3 Vorthack heavy cruisers were systematically destroying civilian infrastructure. The attacking ships were massive, each one capable of cracking a moon, their weapons turning peaceful settlements into radioactive craters. Then, space itself seemed to ripple around the Vorthack vessels. Reality twisted in ways that made several council representatives dizzy just from watching the sensor feeds. When the distortion cleared, the three Vorthack cruisers hung motionless in space, their weapons powered down and their engines offline. What just happened? Counselor Hex Nye whispered. Human forces have deployed containment fields around hostile vessels, Chen explained. The ships are physically intact, but they can no longer function as weapons. The pattern repeated across all 17 target systems. Vorthack assault fleets that had been devastating civilian targets moments before suddenly found themselves trapped in fields of altered spacetime. Their weapons wouldn't fire, their engines wouldn't respond, and their communications were limited to emergency frequencies. This is impossible, Admiral Thexoel protested. No technology can selectively disable ships without destroying them. The power requirements alone would exceed the output of most stars. Admiral, you're thinking in terms of brute force applications, Chen replied. Humanity learned to be more elegant in our solutions. The tactical display updated again, showing human ships materializing throughout the combat zones. But these weren't the massive dreadnoughts that had defended Earth. These vessels were smaller, more streamlined, designed for precision rather than overwhelming firepower. Human medical and evacuation teams are now deploying to all affected colonies, Chen announced. Our priority is civilian casualties, not military engagement. Captain ZYXTH, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. Admiral, the speed of your response suggests you had forces prepositioned throughout the neutral zone. How long have you been preparing for this specific attack? Captain, we've been tracking Vorthack military movements for 6 months. Our intelligence networks are quite extensive. This revelation caused another stir among the council representatives. The idea that humanity had been conducting surveillance operations throughout galactic space without detection was deeply unsettling. Admiral, High Counselor Veltar said carefully, are you saying that humanity has been spying on council member species? No, Counselor. We've been monitoring threats to galactic stability. There's a significant difference. Before Veltar could respond, the communications system activated with an urgent transmission. The face that appeared on the display belonged to War Commander Thekmol, the Vorthack officer who had led the invasion. Galactic Council. Unknown forces have attacked Imperial fleets conducting legitimate military operations. We demand immediate explanation and compensation for our losses. Chen stepped forward, her image transmitted directly to the Vorthack commander. War Commander Thekmol, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. Your forces attacked civilian targets in violation of galactic law. We have responded proportionally. The Vorthack commander's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Humans? Impossible. Intelligence indicates you are primitive mammals incapable of spaceflight. Your intelligence needs updating, Commander. As of this moment, all Vorthack military vessels involved in attacks against civilian targets have been disabled. They remain intact, their crews unharmed, but they are no longer capable of offensive action. You cannot hold Imperial vessels indefinitely. The Empire will not tolerate this interference. Chen's expression remained pleasant, but something in her eyes made several council representatives step back involuntarily. Commander, you misunderstand the situation. We haven't captured your ships. We've simply made them temporarily unavailable for military purposes. What do you mean? The containment fields surrounding your vessels are powered by quantum uncertainty engines. They will remain active as long as the ships maintain hostile intent. If your crews genuinely commit to peaceful withdrawal, the fields will dissipate automatically. War Commander Thekmol's face contorted with rage. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We have over 7,000 ships throughout Imperial space. You cannot threaten the might of the Vorthack Empire. We're not threatening the Empire, Commander. We're demonstrating reality. Chen gestured to the tactical display, which suddenly expanded to show a much larger area of space. Throughout Vorthack territory, blue indicators appeared around every military installation, fleet base, and armed vessel. As of 30 seconds ago, every Vorthack military asset has been contained. Your ships, your bases, your weapons platforms, all of them are now temporarily unavailable for hostile action. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. 7,000 ships and countless military installations had been neutralized simultaneously across dozens of star systems. The precision and coordination required for such an operation exceeded anything galactic civilization thought possible.
How? Admiral Thexol whispered.
Quantum entanglement networks, dimensional phase manipulation, and really excellent timing, Chen replied as if discussing weather patterns.
War Commander Thekmol's transmission flickered as he consulted with his staff.
When he returned, his expression had changed from rage to something approaching terror.
Our entire fleet, every ship, every base, how many vessels do you have? Enough, Commander. The question now is what happens next.
High Counselor Veltar found his voice.
Admiral Chen, you've just demonstrated the ability to neutralize any military force in the galaxy instantly. What are humanity's intentions?
Chen turned to address the full council.
Counselors, humanity seeks coexistence with galactic civilization.
We have no territorial ambitions beyond our own system.
We don't seek to conquer, rule, or dominate any species. Then, what do you want? Counselor Ythera asked. We want galactic civilization to live up to its stated ideals.
We want an end to aggressive wars, slave trading, and genocide.
We want disputes settled through negotiation rather than military action. And, if species refuse to accept these limitations?
Chen gestured to the tactical display, where thousands of contained Vorthack vessels provided a clear answer. Then, we'll make military solutions temporarily unavailable until diplomatic solutions become more attractive.
War Commander Thekmol's image flickered back to life.
Human Admiral, the Empire demands to know your terms for the release of our vessels.
Commander, the terms are simple. Vorthack forces will withdraw completely from all neutral systems. Your empire will provide reparations to colonies damaged in today's attacks.
Most importantly, Vorthack leadership will commit to resolving future disputes through diplomatic channels.
And, if the empire refuses?
Then, your military remains where it is, doing nothing, until your leadership decides that peaceful solutions are preferable to having no military capability at all.
The implications sank in slowly.
Humanity hadn't destroyed the Vorthack fleet, they had simply made it irrelevant. The Empire could choose cooperation or irrelevance, but military aggression was no longer an option.
This is blackmail. Thekmol protested. No, Commander. This is consequences. The Galactic Council has spent millennia debating responses to aggression while civilizations burned. Humanity has simply provided a more immediate feedback mechanism. High Counselor Veltar studied the human admiral carefully. Admiral Chen, you've effectively demonstrated that humanity could control galactic civilization through force. How do we know you won't become the very threat you claim to oppose?
Chen smiled, and, for the first time, the expression seemed genuinely warm rather than predatory.
Counselor, if humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, would we have bothered with this conversation?
We could have simply contained every military vessel in space and dictated terms.
Then, why reveal yourselves at all? Because isolation isn't sustainable forever. Humanity wants to be part of galactic civilization, not separate from it.
We want trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and friendship with other species.
But, on your terms? No, Counselor. On civilization's terms. We've read your charters, your laws, your proclaimed ideals.
Humanity simply intends to hold galactic civilization accountable to its own stated principles. The communications display activated with a new transmission. Emperor Vorthack himself appeared, his ceremonial armor and ancient bearing immediately recognizable to all council representatives.
Human Admiral, the Emperor said formally, the Empire acknowledges your capabilities. What would be required for the release of our forces?
Your Majesty, complete withdrawal from neutral systems, reparations for today's attacks, and a formal commitment to resolve future disputes through established diplomatic channels.
And, if we agree?
Then, the containment fields dissipate immediately, and the Empire regains full use of its military forces.
With the understanding that future aggressive actions will result in immediate recontainment. Emperor Vorthack considered this for several moments. You offer the Empire a choice between cooperation and irrelevance.
Your Majesty, we offer the Empire a choice between civilization and barbarism.
We believe your people are capable of choosing wisely. After a long pause, the Emperor nodded slowly. The Empire agrees to your terms, Admiral. We will withdraw from neutral systems and provide appropriate reparations. Almost immediately, the blue indicators on the tactical display began disappearing as containment fields deactivated around Vorthak vessels. The Empire's military was free to operate again, but everyone understood the new reality. High Counselor Veltar looked at Admiral Chen with a mixture of admiration and concern. Admiral, humanity has just announced itself as the galaxy's enforcer. Are you prepared for that responsibility? Counselor, humanity has been preparing for that responsibility for 60 years. We didn't seek this role, but we won't abandon it now that circumstances require our involvement. Chen activated her communication device. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Protective Custody is complete. All hostile forces have been neutralized, and diplomatic resolutions are in progress. As the immediate crisis concluded, representatives throughout the council chamber began to understand that galactic politics had fundamentally changed. A new player had entered the game, one with the power to enforce the rules everyone else had agreed to follow but rarely observed. The age of consequence had begun, and humanity intended to ensure that civilization's promise finally matched its performance. For species committed to peaceful coexistence, this new reality offered unprecedented security and cooperation. For those who preferred the old ways of conquest and domination, the galaxy had just become a much smaller and more accountable place.